Welcome, everybody. Big Kev's World, Big Kev here with Mel inside the square circle with the superstar Xavier Mykeals in the house.
What up?
What up, man? How's your day going?
Day is going perfect. I didn't do much, worked out, did a little training because, there's a big match coming up, the Screw City Rumble with wrestling show TWS, I call it. That's coming up the 15th of January. So I'm really excited about it, getting ready because a Rumble's a different ball game type of match. So
I'll be damn right it is. So we're going to start out with the first question. What got you into pro wrestling?
man, that's a thinker because I was telling you off air, my first memory in wrestling is the original Twin Magic. Now, some of the younger viewers are going to think I'm referring to the Bella Twins, but Earl Hebner is an old school wrestling manager. And unbeknownst to anybody in 1987, he had a twin brother. And there's the famous story on Saturday night's main event of Ted DiBiase paying his brother, to impersonate him. And it blew my mind as a 9-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, how could they screw Hulk Hogan?
I believe that was Earl and Dave Hefner.
Yes.
That was the brother. Yeah, that was the brothers. Yeah. I remember that. Hogan had his arm all the way up on the 3 count, and they still counted them out anyway. So,
and actually, there's trivia for all you youngsters. Andre the Giant was technically champion for about 15 minutes in that match. They never give him credit for having that Winged Eagle title.
I know, and it really irks me about that. I mean, they made him like such a big 8 wonder of the world, but I'm like, you should put it down in the history books that he was a champ.
I mean, because then he gave it right to Ted DiBiase. But that is my first memory, and I was hooked. And then it was anything I could consume. So we used to get the ESPN. So it was a lot of what at that time was called the indie wrestling. So Jackie Fargo, I watched a lot, in USWA with Jerry Lawler. That's also too when Jeff Jarrett started. So I knew Jeff Jarrett long before he was in WWE. And it just kind of progressed from that. Like, everybody asked what you want to be when you grow up. I always said a pro wrestler.
I did put that down on one of mine too. So I got to get you. So how did you become a part of the wrestling show? Like how'd you get in contact with Matt and Kate?
So I met Nate through my closest personal friend, who is actually also in the wrestling show, Chaos. Yes. He's my oldest friend, great guy. I've known him for almost 30 years. And him and Nate actually did a podcast together. And as fate would have it, Nate invited us down, and the rest is history. So we got involved through Nate the Effing Great.
So with Nate being in Wisconsin, you guys all having that Wisconsin brotherhood there, that's how you were able to meet up with Matt and Kate.
Yeah, so I'm breaking kayfabe right now by saying this, but yes, we knew Nate for 7 years before, because he actually met Josh at an indie show. Josh was wrestling on a show, and Nate was there as a spectator, and that's how that's before Nate got in the business. And that's how those two hooked up. And, Josh and I tell each other everything, much to the chagrin of our significant others. So that's how that all played out.
And Nate, if you're watching, big ups for wearing that Packer singlet on your WrestleMania show or your YouTube Mania show. So, who were your idols growing up in the business and out of the business?
So in the business, I would have to say it was 2, and I'm going to get some heat for one of them. This is the one I'm going to get heat over, Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, by and large, was the man growing up. I don't curse a lot when I do these interviews, but I'm going to get a lot of shit about it because, now parts of his personality are coming to light, with the information age.
Yeah.
But, if you were not a Hulk Hogan fan growing up in the 80s, it's almost like you lived in Timbuktu. You know what I mean? And the other one is Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, you know Xavier, freaked out. Yeah.
I loved Mach and Hogan. And you know what? I actually remember, I think the first pay-per-view my parents let me get was WrestleMania 5. So it was really hard,
Yeah,
But outside of the business, it's definitely my father because he was a great man, hard worker, but he took me to all the matches when they'd come to town, whether it be, So at the time, WWF still played high school auditoriums, in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So whether it be WWF or, the regional people, Dad would take me to every show. And, that's as a little kid how I really kind of got smartened up a little bit, because it's kind of weird, when Jake the Snake and Mr. Perfect pull up in a car together and you're a 10-year-old kid.
Oh yeah, because back then they weren't you weren't supposed to see the heels right with the faces and all that. Yeah, I get it.
So and it's kind of funny because they were supposed to, one's a bad guy, one's a good guy, and I was like, well, what the one Mr. Perfect doesn't like Jake the Snake.
Well, you know what though, I'll tell you this much: we'll probably both get slack, but Hogan was my idol growing up. That's why I've always trained and say my prayers. I took my vitamins, and me and Hogan sometimes dress the same outside of Derek, and I'll wear the little shirts and the little beach shorts and everything, and just, I mean, if you didn't like Hulk Hogan back then, something was wrong with you. And if it wasn't for him, wrestling wouldn't be where it's at right now.
Oh gosh, no. And when we talk later about like some of the business, it's like I can understand a little why he was the way he was behind the scenes, because behind the scenes, whether it be the indies or I haven't, been behind the scenes for some of the bigger shows too, it's a lot of drama. It's like the Housewives of Orange County behind scenes. Like,
yeah. So number 4, if you could punch one celebrity in the face and a wrestler, who would that be?
Well, the celebrity I don't even have to think of. It's Tom Cruise. I hate that guy. It's a combination of his smug ass acting and just the way he portrayed himself about, 15 years ago towards women. Like his blatant misogyny about how he knows about postpartum depression. He knows about this, belittling everybody. I mean, and the guy's 5'3". He's tiny. Like, I don't understand why I don't understand where he gets off being such an asshole. But yeah, that's the guy. I don't think I'd punch him. I think I'd take him to Chinatown.
So who in the business would you like to take a swing at?
JBL. Oh God, that guy. So I'm pretty old school, and if this comes up later, but I'll just say this now: I'm old school in the fact that you give back. So a lot of what I learned wasn't on a set, wasn't filming. It was hanging out with the boys and learning from the boys when we're out of character. You can't take stuff personally. And especially what he did to Blue Meanie, just because Blue Meanie made some comments about him, it was out of line. And a lot of other people, Swoggle's from Wisconsin. Swoggle talks about how JBL is just an asshole. So JBL is definitely the guy that I'd take a pop at.
So we're got a little bit of some fan questions in this right now. I was gonna wait till later, but we'll do it now. From Ryan. For each wrestling era, who was Xavier Mykeals' favorite wrestler or wrestlers?
Okay, we're going to have to limit this because as I get older, I go older school. So, you know what I mean? So we'll just say from what I consider the golden era, which this guy right here, Gorgeous George. Gorgeous George, in my opinion, is the guy who originated the wrestling character. I mean, there was characters before him like Sputnik Monroe and Toots Mondt, but Gorgeous George is the guy. He would bring canned Florida air into New York crowds. You know what I mean? Throw his golden bobby pins. He's one of my absolute favorite. And it's actually, I challenge all the viewers to watch a Gorgeous George match because it's 30 years ahead of its time. I mean, he's doing head scissor takeovers. He's doing headlock takeovers. It's not like what people think of 1950s wrestling, where there's a headlock for 35 minutes.
Right.
So Gorgeous George is definitely one of my all-time favorites. Macho Man Randy Savage. And Macho Man Randy Savage is a little different, though, because I don't work a match the same way Macho Man does. But just Macho Man's pageantry. Shawn Mykeals, huge influence on my life. And I would also have to say Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You damn right. I'm glad you chose me.
My buddy, so Chaos, the guy I was talking about, we stole his dad's car when we were 16 years old and drove to Milwaukee, and we were there. We were like 6 rows above Stone Cold and Doc Hendricks when he originated Austin 316.
Wow.
It was, and you didn't know it was going to take off when he said it. It was just kind of like, Wisconsin is at that point was a very Christian state. So when he said that, I thought the city was going to burn. I never thought that would take off, and.
So Ryan asks us another question. He asked what your favorite tag team was.
My all-time favorite tag team? Oh, let's see if we have I actually have an autographed picture of them.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. They had the coolest wrestling theme back then, I thought. They had the coolest wrestling theme back then.
It was the whole presentation, that the coming out to the ring with, which the music isn't even on the network anymore because Jim Johnston owns it. But the whole presentation, like coming down like the Road Warrior movie, not the Road Warriors, and they were just badasses. Those were legitimate guys. That was what I consider a wrestler. Like you knew that if you crossed those two, you'd get your ass kicked.
So we got 2 more fan questions and we'll go back to the regular ones. Chuck asks, were you a fan of The Undertaker or just his special move?
All right. So we got to send a shout out to Chuck. He is the owner. He is my sponsor.
Yeah.
He owns this place. Fantasy. Let me get it on there. Fantasy Fitness.
Oh, nice. Nice.
He actually got me back in shape after my divorce because I put on a lot of weight when I was married. But contact him. I'll put it up again. So I've known Chuck for 40 years, but when we were kids, yes, I was a huge fan of The Undertaker when The Undertaker first came out, at Survivor Series 90. It was 90, right?
Yeah.
And he's younger than me, so it was a neighborhood. I was a bully thing. So I gave a tombstone to his favorite stuffed animal. And, kayfabe, brother, I killed the damn duck. But yes, to answer Chuck's question, I love The Undertaker. He is actually something that a lot of the guys nowadays, because I'm not a fan of a lot of wrestling nowadays, he's an example of what a lot of the guys nowadays can do with their gimmick. You can stay in gimmick, you can stay kayfabe without being neon and cheesy. Because until the year he retired, he never gave interviews. He wouldn't smile, at the airport. He stayed in character. He was the Undertaker. You had no question about it. He was never Mark Calloway. So that's why I like him.
Undertaker is my second favorite. It's a tie between him and Hogan. So for me, Undertaker was the epitome of what I wanted to do when I got into the business. I mean, I used to wear the gloves like he did and everything because I thought Undertaker was one of the very first people to wear those little, besides Ken Shamrock, he was one of the very first ones to wear those MMA gloves. And to me, I love Undertaker.
So, and here's some advice to people coming up in the business who are either just getting trained. Undertaker is a case study in how to keep your character fresh. So when he first debuted, he was the Wild West mortician Undertaker. But as you know, us fans, grew up, that started becoming lame, which he eventually, he morphed into the Satanic Undertaker, then the American Badass, and then the one that retired, the MMA star Undertaker. And it was an organic progression. That's the beauty of him.
And I know there's another fan question after this one, but I said I would do one more, then we'll go back. Hellraiser, what's your favorite theme song for wrestling?
Of all time?
Yep, pretty much what he's asking.
My favorite wrestling theme song, well, besides my theme song, I would guess like the theme song that plays like in my head when I'm alone and I'm getting out of the shower is Flair. I mean, that is that is the greatest theme song. It is so cocky and so arrogant, right? And just like Flair, you get out of the shower, you do the helicopter thinking of his theme song.
You know what's great about it is that when I would go to wrestling shows back in the day, and then when I started taking her to our first couple of Raws and SmackDowns and stuff like that, right before the show even starts, the crowd's over there doing a woo chant all the time. There's always a woo chant. And it's never like, and even when I was younger, it was always woo.
Yes,
woo.
Definitely. When was the last time you guys went? Out of curiosity.
Oh my gosh, last time I've been, I think it was 2013. It was for my birthday. The Rock was in town.
Were they still doing? So the last live show I went to for WWE was WrestleMania 19. But were they still doing the what chants? Because the what chants are
yes.
awesomely hilarious.
Yes, they were still doing the what? They were still doing the what chants, and I mean, I think actually no, the last time we went was 2015 when Sting was facing Triple H.
That's right. Yes,
that was the last time. Yeah, probably about that much.
I've never. That is, I envy you. I have not ever seen Sting.
I saw him when I went to WCW a few times. He wasn't there for this Raw that we went to, but they had a package for him. But I was depressed because he wasn't there. I was like, man, really?
Yep.
Don't worry, everybody who's asked the question. We'll get back to it in just a little bit. So, number 5, what's the difference with the wrestling show compared to an indie show?
So an indie show is so you're trained, right? You get training from either you pay to go to a school or you know a guy and they do it Jedi style. And what I mean by Jedi style is he's like your Jedi master, and that guy is training you until he clears you. Because outside, when I was coming up, you learned how to work. You didn't learn how to memorize. So you learned how to square your back off to take a bump. You learned how to lead with your left. You learned footwork, and that's in fighting too. Whether you're MMA, boxer, footwork is key to the professional wrestling business. If your footwork is off, you're screwed. So in an indie show, you got your training and then you just go. You show up at a show, you show up at a venue, the promoter will tell you who's going over, who's not going over. They may give you a little lead in of what they would like to see in a match if they have long-term booking plans, but that's about it. The wrestling show is more of a show. And it's very, very new to me because I'm not used to memorization. I'm used to playing off the crowd, reacting to the crowd. So the biggest difference is that there's the distinct beats that the owner of the wrestling show wants you to hit. And if you don't hit those beats, you're doing it over again.
So Matt is pretty much like a perfectionist. In
a good way. I mean, in a good way. It's his product. And, I tell some of the greener guys who, because I help Matt train a little. So I tell some of the greener guys, he's the promoter. So if he tells us to take a poop in the middle of the ring, we're taking a poop in the middle of the ring. Yep. It's his show. So, I mean, that's the main difference. And it's cool to see this side of it because in all honesty, as much as it's foreign to me, this is the way the business is going. It's shying away from our generation, Kev. And it's moving into this more Hollywood theatrical production.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people too. Is more fast paced. Like the wrestlers are bringing in like 50 moves on a TV show instead of waiting for the pay per view. They're kicking out of every finisher. It's almost like the finisher doesn't even matter anymore in wrestling.
Right. And, you know, false finishes because I was trained by the Gagnes. I don't know if you ever heard of the Gagnes, the AEW.
Vern Gagne, all them.
I never met Vern, but
Okay.
because Vern was I trained in 99, so Vern was way too old. But false finishes were something that were saved for like main events or for blow-off matches.
Right.
So I'm going to use lingo. Just Mel or Kev, interrupt me if you think the lingo is too like specific, so I can explain it to the viewers. But a false finish is you hit a huge move, whether it be a finisher or that stupid ass Canadian destroyer, and you kick out of it.
That's pretty descriptive.
I do love that move, but people are doing it way too much.
It's a great move. It looks beautiful, but for 230-pound guys to be doing this to each other and then kicking out at a 1.5 or 2 is like, it's sacrilegious to me. It goes from being a wrestling match and a competition to just who can pull off the prettiest move.
Yeah, before we go into the next question, I'll tell you this much. I get a lot of heat because I critique the AEW product, and there's some AEW fans that get pissed at me. And I like to troll them because it's just funny because they get all upset because I said, well, look, Goldberg, a 54-year-old man, jumped off a 20-foot thing, speared Bobby Lashley through a table, and was fine, but Cody Rhodes couldn't suplex a guy off the table, off the top rope into a burning table. And I would mess with them on that, and they're like, you shouldn't hate on AEW. What are you doing? I'm like, look, I'm not hating on it. I'm just telling you guys that AEW wrestlers go by too quick. They're putting in way too many moves at one point instead of just slowing down and being methodical, telling a story in the ring. That's what I love. I love when wrestlers tell a story.
And that's how I was trained too. I agree with you a lot with that statement. AEW, now this is my opinion, AEW is the best thing that we actually have on TV right now besides New Japan. But for New Japan, you need the service. The reason I don't like WWE is Vince McMahon has totally lost his mind. I mean, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore. They're not. Why they broke up the Hurt Business so fast is beyond me. That was one of the greatest factions in pro wrestling. They actually, I'll tell you this, Kev, where they lost me was at that going away for The Undertaker. That's where they lost me. I was trying to be a WWF fan until, what was that, 2 years ago? It was right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was trying to be a WWF fan. And it just seems like Vince McMahon loves to sodomize the fans because I really felt like I got screwed. You know, Undertaker, who is probably the greatest legend outside of Hogan, Mach, you know, all those top echelon guys, doesn't even get a send-off. He has other legends walk to the ring and wave, and then he comes down. It was ridiculous.
And he didn't even interact with them either, which was also something I didn't like either. I'm like, you know, you're giving Undertaker a send-off. You have all of his former opponents, rivals there, and you don't have him interact with them.
No, not at all. It was they make some terrible decisions, but with AEW, I do agree. I get lost in the shuffle with every match is the same. Every match is 200 miles a minute. There's 30 false finishes. There's going to be a glove with 6-inch railroad spikes attached to it in 3 of the 4 matches. Everybody is going through tables. Now, Kev, I know you trained a little too, but the way I was taught is if somebody has a table spot on a live show or a pay-per-view, that match is the only match that has the table spot. You know, so it's special.
Yep.
Or if there's going to be a 630, like Ricochet's move. If somebody's going to do a 630, nobody else does something like that on the show, so that you save it for when that person hits it. It's going to pop the crowd, and it's going to be memorable. But there's too much. And the only time I really like AEW is when the old guys wrestle, like Dustin, you know,
Sting.
Sting.
Jericho, yeah.
But, and you know, the other thing is a lot of AEW, in my opinion, can lose believability sometimes when guys the size of Darby Allin are kicking the shit out of like guys the size of Big Show. You know, it just doesn't make any sense, because in a real fight, this is when I train guys, you know, what we're doing is choreographed. You're learning how to fall. We're just here for entertainment, but you also have to suspend disbelief. So you have to make these people believe that a move you're going to do is something you could do in a real fight. And I don't know about you, Kev, but when's the last time you let a little guy have enough time to get on a pool table and jump into a coffin drop on you to hurt you in a real fight? You'd move out of the frickin' way.
Oh, I'd never let them get the drop on me.
Now, I don't want people to get pissed at me. Darby Allin's very, very talented. I'm not taking anything away from him. He made the big leagues. He's very talented. It's just, you got to be careful with the way you book those little guys, because it just makes your product look stupid. If they're kicking the living tar out of guy, like you said, the guys the size of Sting, who are 6'5".
Well, I mean, I don't know if you watch NWA Power, but I like how their setup is. It's kind of like the old school way of promos right before the ring, then they go straight to the ring. I mean, they're on YouTube only, but I kind of like that old school method that they use on there.
Oh, definitely. And actually, the wrestling show, the way that the studio is set up is pretty much like that. If there's enough fan suggestions, I'm sure Matt would include like a pan shot of that, but that banner, you know, the rest of the banner that we do our interviews in front of is literally like three or 4 feet away from the wrestling ring itself, just like back in the old days, you know.
So another question for you is, how did you come up with the name Superstar Xavier Mykeals?
So that goes back to my radio days, because I was a radio DJ for a little bit right after I first started training. And so to enlighten people who are younger than 35 years old, there used to be this magical device called the Yellow Pages, where, where you didn't have Google. You had to pick up a book called the Yellow Pages and find somebody's name, and everybody's name was in it.
Yep.
So I could not go by Jay Johnston, my real name, on radio, because back in that day, if you were any kind of radio DJ, successful or not, you were going to get crank calls or some weird shit like that. So typically you went with whatever name you thought was cool as your first name, and then your middle name as your last name. So Michael is my legitimate birth middle name. And I've always liked the name Xavier. But that is not the name I used in radio, though. It was my first name. That's how I came up with Xavier Mykeals. When I first got into radio, I was Xavier Mykeals. But it kind of evolved, because when I first got into radio, I sucked. Kev, Mel, I'm not even going to lie to you. I sounded like Kermit the Frog. It was awful, because I was trying too hard. You know, I was trying to have the radio voice, and I was trying to, I wasn't me. And I did this little bit about how, and it was right around the time I was training. This is a true story. A guy like about your size, Kev, a tall, muscular guy low-blowed me during a training match, and he actually hit me in the nuts. And so you're taught to pull it, but his arms were so big, you know, like he couldn't pull it fast enough. And so my balls swelled up. So a guy, you know, joked with me. He's like, hey, just like the movie, you're the Big J Bowski, you know, you know. So I went as the Big J Bowski then in radio. But to answer the question, that's how I did it. It was originally a radio name, which I thought was really cool, Xavier Mykeals, and it just kind of carried on to when I got cleared to actually wrestle after I was done training.
So what's the one thing that you love about this business and the one thing you can't stand?
What I love about the business is the magic, and I still feel it occasionally, you know, but being in it is a different story. But I see the magic in my 5-year-old son's eyes now. Like when I take him to the matches, I mean, he believes everything is actually happening. Even my 15-year-old daughter, she's smart. You know, she's smartened up, but there are spots and there are, you know, some promos that still fire that it's that magic, Kev. Do you know what I'm getting at? with that?
My 66-year-old dad, who's had a bad stroke and his health is bad. He's in a wheelchair. Even when he still watches wrestling, he still has that magic in his eyes. Like, he still gets into it. He still gets like, well, if that guy didn't jump him, he would have won the match. And it just kind of, my dad still gets into it.
It's very
like,
theatrical.
Very, very theatrical when he gets into it. It's funny.
No, and that's what I absolutely love about the business is it makes you feel like you're like a kid again. You know what I mean? It's so awesome. The thing I don't like about the business is, so here's a phrase called living the gimmick. I hate the living the gimmick thing. So there are some people that I know who think they're actually like, I'll just make up a name, Gatorman 5000, so they'll act in their private life like Gatorman 5000. Or the most annoying thing is backstage to the boys, like act to the boys like Gatorman. That shit I absolutely hate.
I've always hated the politics behind the scenes. The whole like, well, this kid's got talent, but I'm going to hold him down because I don't want to lose my spot. And you know what I'm talking about with that.
Yep.
It's the whole, you come in there with a bunch of talent, older guys don't want you to, and then they want you to wrestle their way instead of the way that you want to, and they never let you have any input. That's probably one of the things I don't like about the business.
So the thing about that, to address that, I dislike that too, but anybody I train, the advice I give them, that's called going into business for yourself. When you try to go into business for yourself and use the politics in ring and behind the scenes, I Summerslam 2005 people, if they ever do that to me. Do you know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
So SummerSlam 2005, Hulk Hogan wrestled Shawn Mykeals. And the original storyline was supposed to be a 3-series match. Hogan, Shawn, Hogan. Shawn was fine with Hogan winning the series. Well, Hogan politicked to the point where it became a single match and not the one Shawn wanted. So you know what Shawn did? He oversold absolutely everything and made Hogan look like a fool in the ring. So that's the way I suggest to people, if they go into business and politics, that you can actually get back and prove a point to somebody that, hey, this is all fake. This can be taken away tomorrow.
Well, we kind of touched on this, but what do you think is wrong with pro wrestling on TV today?
It's overly scripted. There's no spontaneity, and there's nothing organic. Nothing feels organic about it anymore. Now, there's pros and cons. So the pro about what I don't like is that when you script everything down to a promo, you know what the product you're putting out on TV. You know what you can market.
Right.
The problem with that is you lose all the magic of professional wrestling. So Stone Cold, like what that story I just told you about Josh and I stealing his dad's car, that promo was organic by Steve Austin, and that whole build of 316 was totally organic. Nobody scripted that. He just said it. And that's where the magic comes in, because now you can look back and say, hell, I was there when that happened. But the over scripting of absolutely everything, because Macho Man, I was getting at this before. The one thing I don't like was his working style. He would script all the everything. You know what I mean? The rest holds, the moves. If they would get away from that and just let wrestlers go in and feed off the crowd, like how Jericho works. Jericho is great. You can tell Jericho doesn't script when he works a match for AEW.
Yep. So let's see. So who would be your dream opponent, male and female?
Oh boy. Well, the two female ones that come to off the top of my head, Victoria and Gail Kim.
It's good choices.
Mainly, I think they are two of the all-time most talented wrestlers in general. Because especially Victoria, when Victoria was hot around, what was that, 2003 with Stevie Richards, her footwork, and so I judge stuff being inside the business, you know what I mean? But her footwork was absolutely amazing. the male opponent, God, I'd probably have to say Steve Austin pre-neck injury. Just because after the neck injury, you could tell he was really limiting a lot of his moveset. But before that neck injury with Owen Hart, Steve Austin was probably the greatest worker in the entire world.
Yeah.
I'd even safe to say better than Shawn Mykeals in the mid-90s.
I guess my dream opponent, I told Mel this, would be I would just want to face the Undertaker just to learn. Just to learn under him. And yes, I would take the tombstone. I would tell him right off the bat, I'm like, look, I will take it from you. I won't even kick out. I would just take it because I would want to learn from guys like that. Like a dream match would be Hogan, but I would be afraid that I wouldn't want to beat him. Because that kid in me would be like, I don't want to hurt him.
That's like the end of have you ever seen that Clint Eastwood movie? What the hell is Any Which Way But Loose?
Yes, love that one. Yeah.
Like the end of that, like he finally gets that main fight against his, idol, and he throws the match because he doesn't want to beat his idol. No, I hear you. But dude, Undertaker's a great choice because there's stories about like newbies in the ring. They're going up against Taker and they're freezing because they're starstruck. And he helps him through it, like, whispering like, okay, kick my knee. Okay, punch my head. You know what I mean? Until they get loose enough where they actually get into a match. So Undertaker would be awesome, except that the choke slam, screw that. There's no way I'm taking a 12-foot bump ever in my life ever again.
I said to myself, I wouldn't take a regular power driver again because that hurt.
Oh, yeah. But depending on the ring, like, so the original ring that Matt and Kate had in the wrestling show was a boxing ring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to smarten people up, a boxing ring is built totally different than a wrestling ring. So
Absolutely.
When Josh and I bumped in that the first time, I think we both felt our spleen in our neck. I mean, it was a hard bump.
So what about their ring now? Like, what kind of is it still a boxing ring now, or is it?
No. They got an actual pro wrestling ring. It's a low boy, so it's a little bit of a learning curve for me. You know what I mean? So it's only about a foot off the ground, but it makes it easier to do shows. A lot of indie promotions are going to those low boys because then you can book in, bowling alleys, concert halls with those low 1970s drop ceilings or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a learning curve for older guys like me because especially taking bumps out of the ring, you don't have that gap in the apron to swing your legs under when you're taking the bumps outside the ring. So, but it's a lot easier to bump in now because it's built to be a pro wrestling ring and not a boxing ring.
Going back to another fan question here. I got this here. Mr. Ryan asked, what is your wrestling style and how do you keep it fresh and interesting?
So the way I describe my wrestling style is like an amalgam of Bret Hart and Macho Man. So there's technical moves, a lot of technical moves, a lot of mat wrestling. There's brawling with the occasional high flying. And the reason I went with that is you kind of gravitate towards what you grew up with. So since that's what I grew up with, that's what I kind of emulated. But the way I keep it fresh is I like working an opponent more than once because I like bumping for somebody and putting somebody over so I can learn their style a little bit.
Yeah.
And try to incorporate how I can work with, like, say, a high flyer. One of my greatest feuds was with this kid in the Indies named the Prodigy Matt Jones. Or not Matt Jones, Prodigy Matt Taylor, pardon me. And Taylor was like a Ricochet type guy. Had he not gotten a master's degree, he probably would have made it pretty big. But the styles clash between my mat wrestling and his high flying like taught me a lot about what I can incorporate from his style into my repertoire.
another question that Mr. Ryan asks is, what do young wrestlers get or do wrong when they first get into the business? That's how they yeah.
So when you first get in the business, I think where a lot of them go wrong is after you're cleared to wrestle, you think you're a veteran. I think that's where a lot of them go wrong. They don't just shut their mouth and listen. You know what I mean? Like, you got a lot of dues to pay when you're first coming up. You're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose a lot. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason. There's a whole psychology behind a new guy losing a lot. You're learning how to bump. You're learning how to work. Where they go wrong is, I think it's like what a lot of kids who are coming out of college nowadays think. This is the best analogy I can use. You come out of college and you instantly think you are going to be making $400,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of these up and coming indie guys think they are going to be, you know, because they have a great build, they're going to be Jungle Boy. Well, you know, you got to pay your dues. You got to learn where your lightning in the bottle is.
Now, James, let's see what this is. James asked, "What brought you back to wrestling?"
James Harder, I love you, bro. He's a fan from back in the day. I've known him forever. So he saw me back in the old days, but I took time off because I got married and life just kind of happened.
Right.
And what brought me back is after the divorce, Chaos, Josh, suggested, like, well, why don't we work one more match? And so we did. And it's like, holy shit, we're still in shape, guy. You know what I mean? Like, we can still work with these young bucks. And it just, to answer James' question, that magic was still there, that it was fun. You know, I at this point in my life, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, but it was fun and I could still do it and not embarrass myself.
Hosea asked, what was your training like to get back into shape?
So that was quite rough. Like, thanks to these guys right here, Fantasy Fitness, it was quite rough because nowadays, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Back in the day, I took HGH. You know what I mean? There was a lot of supplements that helped you get into shape when we were coming up. I don't know if you dabbled in that at all, Kev, but I sure as shit did. And yeah. But now with the fear of like heart problems and anything else, you got to go to somebody who is smart. So it took a lot. It took a lot of cardio. It took a lot of relearning how to eat, because there's a whole freaking science on how to eat.
Yep.
So, you know, like these guys, if you guys are interested in losing weight, Charles here helped me lose 45 pounds and get me back into ring shape.
So Chuck asked, but go ahead.
Sorry, but yeah, to answer Josiah, was that his name? Josiah's question?
Yeah.
A lot of hard work. And the best thing for people over 35 that Charles actually pointed out to me is overnight intermittent fasting it's a miracle. So I would stop eating at 7 p.m. and not eat again until 11 the next day. You know, and then between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. is where I'd squeeze my meals in. So for me, that really worked.
So one last fan questions until we get back to the other one is, Chuck asks, thoughts on Andy Kaufman?
Andy Kaufman was a shot in the arm to professional wrestling. I loved it. I still love it. I know people give that whole gimmick a lot of shit because, you know, he was Darby Allin size. You know, he was little going up against Lawler. But they played that right. You know what I mean? Kaufman never beat up Lawler. You know what I mean? And he was the typical slimy little heel who was beating up women, you know, doing everything that people hated. But then for him to put his neck out so far and risk his career to do what he did on the David Letterman show is spellbinding, in my opinion. you know, because he really made that feud so believable. He did his job. He did his job as a heel. And he understood something as a pre-existing celebrity that a lot of pre-existing celebrities don't understand, and that's the business is bigger than you. So he had no qualms about getting his ass handed to him by Jerry Lawler because he knew the business was bigger than him and it would live without Andy Kaufman.
Getting back to the questions here, who is your dream opponent on TWS, the wrestling show?
So I don't mean to draw the curtain back a little bit, but I'm going to draw the curtain back a little bit because I told you, Kev, I'd be honest, but yes. Most of us portray several characters on the wrestling show.
Right.
You know, I mask up, so it's harder to tell who I am, even though you can see my blonde hair sticking out through half the masks. But so I've wrestled nearly everybody. I'd have to say the character that I want to wrestle the most would be superstar Xavier Mykeals and Crazy Casey. I think that would be a hell of a match.
She was on here last time. She did not like my cross. So, I mean, yeah. She looked like she would bite and looked like she would be fun in a hardcore match. If you put her against Terry Funk, it would be magical.
That's an awesome gimmick. I love that gimmick. Yeah. It fits Kate well, you know, and she portrayed. See, that's the thing. Like, she knows the character. She doesn't go back and forth from one level to the next level to try to like gain some type of fan interaction, which is where a lot of wrestlers lose their crowd, is, you know, when they're not consistent.
Here. Okay. What kind of rituals or things that you do before a show or a match, like, you know, to get you ready, prepared and all that? Like, what kind of, because some wrestlers have rituals.
So I normally, depending on for me, it's like so if I'm starting, I like to listen to music, and that normally gauges me through the rest of the show, really depending on how much I am in or not in the show. So if I'm superstar, I'll listen to 80s cock rock, you know, like Poison, Motley Crue, kind of gets me in the mindset. If I'm Mr. Z, I'll listen to old jazz or something, and that kind of gets me in the groove. I mean, I've seen a lot of other things that a lot of other guys do, yoga, meditation. Hell, Honky Tonk Man likes to get fucked up, pardon my language. We wrestled a show with Honky Tonk Man, and besides banging the promoter's wife for most of the show and leading up to the main event, not lying, he was drunker than a frickin' skunk for the main event.
I'm not surprised. Honky Tonk Man is a lot of people don't know him and Jerry Lawler are actually related. A lot of people don't know that, but
no, he wasn't bad to the boys, you know, but he was definitely kind of an asshole.
If you was in WWE or AEW, so what would your theme and finisher be? And would you still be superstar Xavier Mykeals?
I'd like to be, because my finish is something I kind of formed in like 96, because nobody was really doing it. I loved Dean Malenko's Cloverleaf, right?
Yeah.
And I also loved the Lion Tamer. So I thought, why don't I merge the two? And that's how the Southern Cross was born. So I hook them up as the Cloverleaf, but then I sidestep and kneel down on their back, you know, like the Lion Tamer. I'd like to use that move. I'd like to use my theme song, which is a remix of I Touch Myself by the Divinals. But in all reality, I'm old school. So if the promoter told me to dress up, you know, like a giant hot dog and come down to Cotton Eye Joe, that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, you know what? I mean,
I like that.
Mel's been in the Lion Tamer. She's gotten a chance to taste how that feels, and her and Kate both were like, no.
Right. There's definitely a way, like with the Southern Cross, there's definitely a way that I can put it on that would hurt. I mean, like if you're not flexible, it'll hurt a lot more. So kudos to you, Mel, because I hate being put in those moods.
Thank you.
So, this is a good question here. Do you think indie wrestlers are underpaid?
By and large, yes, because a lot of them give up. They like what happened with me. Like I was getting $25 to $50 a match. You know what I mean? So I had a wife, I had a kid on the way, and it's like, what do you do? And the payouts are better nowadays, depending on your level of the card. They kind of, if you're working for a good promoter, I should say, if you're working for a good promoter, it'll scale just like in WWE. However, I mean, people come to a lot of these shows expecting to see like what they see on TV. So 700-mile-a-minute matches. And guys just aren't built for that without the trainers. So yes, people are definitely highly underpaid on the indie circuit. But what are you going to do? Because the promoters pay people out of the door. If you're up and coming, you know, you're paid out of the door if you're up and coming. There's certain promoters, like I know there's one up north who he'll give a price quote that whoever's putting the show on has to come together like collectively, like one big kitty for that pool of talent, and then the promoter divvies it up. But yeah, there's never really, it's kind of messed up. There's never really been a price scale for any independent wrestler, which is sad.
It is sad, and I understand it because they're trying to get you to understand how the business was back in the day, you know, and you know, pay your dues and all of that. But you know, I still believe in the old school way. However, I do believe that these men and women out there do need to be taken care of a little better.
Oh yeah, especially, you know, health wise, because it's a lot of the stuff. A lot of the moves that these guys do nowadays are highly dangerous, you know, and if you get hurt, that's going to be a big hospital bill. And that is actually too, Kev, why a lot of guys get pissed when they're putting on a match of their life, you know, flipping, almost breaking their neck. And then a girl comes out in a thong and it gets a bigger pop than everything you did. No offense. I love women. I love women's wrestling, but it's just, it's something that pisses the boys off.
So here goes a question for you. This is a wrestling show question. Nate the Effing Great is the Galactic Champion. Is your eyes set on him for the future?
So as superstar, yes, I always want gold. I would love to, you know, to have the Galactic Championship because, you know, superstar Xavier Mykeals, you know, I dress like a star. I look like a star. I could make that belt a star once again. I just don't foresee Nate and I crossing paths anytime soon because in the wrestling show, I have my hands full. You know, I formed the Body Stars. We can talk a little bit about the Body Stars here in a second because that's been around since 1996. But me and the Body Stars have our hands full right now with the Outliers, and there's actually going to be some legal action coming up in this next show that you guys are going to have to pay attention to because I am going to be suing Patrick McMichael because it's too close to my copyrighted name of Xavier Mykeals, which you see on the bottom of the screen. So I'm sure that's going to cause some problems with Patrick McMichaels, but I beat him once, and I know I can do it again.
You know, speaking of Nate, when Nate was on the show with us, you know, he made the mistake of saying that he would put the belt on the line against anybody. Mel looked at me, I looked at him, and I was like, don't tell me something like that because I will come out of retirement. I'll get in that 20 by 20 ring, and I'll stomp a moho in his ass and take the belt from him.
Well, you know, so let me say something about the Body Stars here because there are openings in the Body Stars, and we would love to have both you and Mel. Because what the Body Stars are a platform. I formed it in 1996, actually, because this might piss a lot of people off, but most wrestlers nowadays are like this. I started out as a backyard guy before I got trained. So with that stigma, because that is a stigma in the wrestling business, if you were a backyarder before you got trained. So I formed the Body Stars as a platform for like people like me, misfits, degenerates, people who just don't fit in. And not saying you guys are one, but our body stars are the place to come, because I would love to see you kick the shit out of Nate, because he is such a smug son of a bitch.
You know, I have that old school way of like, he's a big boy, a strong dude. Maybe we can reenact a WrestleMania 3, me body slamming him in the middle of the ring.
And I'd be there with Mel outside the ring cheering for you.
Hell yeah.
Well, I will tell you this much. The one thing I will honestly say about the body stars is that me and Mel are pretty much, we don't fit in with society a lot.
Mm-mm.
So we're pretty degenerates. I'm a degenerate. I mean, I've done some.
I'm dark.
If me and you got together, Xavier, it would be like Sean and Diesel back in the day.
Oh God, I love that.
I would
I
be
love that.
I would be your Kevin Nash, pretty much. Is what I'm trying to say. You know,
Hell yeah, dude. Because I need
Power
muscle. I mean, sometimes I can wrestle, but sometimes my mouth writes a check I can't cash. So
we have to talk about that off air. Yeah. So I used to wrestle myself in and out of the ring like Matt and Kate does. If well, we just talked about this. If I was to come on the wrestling show, what benefits would I have joining the Body Stars?
So there's no judgments, you know, like our latest shirt, I don't have it with me because I actually sold out. But the label is, labels don't define us, rules don't confine us. So there's no labels, there's no rules. We're there for each other. And that is what the Body Stars are all about, is it's a platform. It's not just about me. Yes, I formed it. I am the de facto leader, just because I'm the mouthpiece, you know, but it's a platform to everybody, for everybody to shine. In fact, if any of us were to win a title as the Body Stars in the TWS, I will, and this is the first time Matt's probably going to hear this, I will institute the Freebird rule. So let's say I win the Galactic title. That means the Body Stars are the Galactic champions, not just me.
I love the Freebird rule. Yep. Let's see what we got here. What's the next one? What are some of your goals in life? Like whenever your career is finished, you know, what kind of goals would you like to get in before you finish?
So I want to give back. You know, I want to pass some of my knowledge on to people so that they understand what, because a lot of what the business is sorry, I just got a message from the ex-wife. No, it's all good. She's cool. I'm cool with all my exes, but so the goal is to just give back, because that's what the business is lacking. It's almost like guys don't want to help each other out anymore. And that is really where I learned, is from the other guys, not from watching a television show, not from playing WWE 2K14 and watching the moves over and over again. So that is my goal with the professional wrestling business. With my life, my goal is to be the best daddy I can be to my two children, and somebody that they can be proud of. I mean, my son's a little too young to understand the difference between a heel and a face, but just somebody that they can be proud of. That is my goal in life.
I think with wrestling, what you were talking about is, I see a lot of me attitudes, not a we. Like, and I think that when you go back to the Monday Night Wars, and especially the territories, it was sharing, helping each other. You know, like you will see Jerry Lawler come over here and do something with WCCW, and you would see the Von Erichs go over here and help out over here. Nowadays, I feel like wrestling is all about a me attitude. It's what have you done for me?
No, it totally is. You know, and I don't know if it's because people are afraid, like you were talking about earlier, losing the spot. I don't know if people are afraid of losing the spot, but I'll tell you how I stayed fresh and how I've been over a lot is I put people over. And that is what a lot of guys are lacking. They don't understand that you can get the shit kicked out of you in a wrestling match, but if you make that other guy look like $1 million, everybody in the dressing room is going to want to work with you.
And it also builds new stars.
Yes, exactly. Because I mean, you can't be on top of the mountain the entire time. You know, I don't know it's just like, Kevin, the generation you and I grew up in, half the fun was the climb of the mountain, of them working their way up the ladder. Or, for instance, when Hogan got his chest crushed by the earthquake, he had to work his way back up to a main event slot. You can't always be on top. And then sometimes it's not fun being on top. Trust me, I've been around a lot of strippers. I don't want to be on top all the time.
Speaking of Hogan on that part, when I first saw WrestleMania 6, me and my brother both I still have it on VHS actually. I cried when Hogan lost because that was the first time I saw Hogan lose clean.
Dude, me too. Like, my sister took me to a bowling alley because at that time it was still closed circuit pay-per-view.
Right.
So my sister took me to a bowling alley and I kept it together because I was around, my buddies. But when I got home, I locked myself in my room and I could not believe Hulk Hogan got beat by, of all people, the Ultimate Warrior. Even as a kid, I thought the Ultimate Warrior was the biggest freaking joke, to be politically correct. I never liked Warrior, ever.
I never understood what the fuck he was talking about.
Dude, his promos are awesome because it's like, and not awesome in a good way, awesome in a bad way, because he's talking like he's strung out on methamphetamines, you know what I mean? And talking about the mountains of Ebernar on planet Nimbus 6 and crashing airplanes with midgets. And it's like, what does that have anything to do with your match that's coming up, brah? I
remember the promo. He talked about the plane crash with Hogan at WrestleMania 6. He's like, I was like, what in the world? You talking about you want to see him die?
Right. You guys are going to crash an airplane together. And it's great because if you go on YouTube, sometimes they'll have like the Warrior promos all like edited together. And if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was some guy who, like a stay off of drugs commercial.
The first time I showed her a promo of the Warrior, she's like, what kind of crack is he on? I was like,
yep.
I don't know.
See, in his mind, I was reading a little bit because I like reading the underground autobiographies of people who like have done research that were around those people, but aren't like celebrities.
Yeah, me too.
In Warrior's mind, it was written. I'd have to look up the book. I can text it to you if you're interested, but it's by a friend of his named Dave. And apparently that's the way Warrior thought, like Spider-Man and Superman all talked, because he thought he was a superhero. And I don't know if it was the saturation of the steroids, but he got crazy, Kev. Do you remember in the late 90s, that whole Desitricity shit?
I remember he used to go around the universities and start getting into fights with college kids over, like,
yeah. And isn't that funny? WWE has once again edited history. That's what another thing I hate about WWE. They edit history because that phase of Warrior's life, rather than they could have used that as a learning experience because he was highly anti-Semitic, highly anti-gay, highly misogynist, had all those talks. And rather than saying he learned, using it as a learning experience that he understood that what he did was wrong, they just pretended like it never happened.
Yeah, that's kind of my problem with Vince and WWE is that they punished Hulk Hogan for his comment. Now they're punishing Ric Flair for something that happened in May 2002 that you guys should have fired him then for the whole plane ride from hell. And now you basically took Ric Flair off the intro of the show now. And it's kind of like they used to.
Yet they still have an award, the Warrior Award, that they give to people who, are either faced hard times and survived, or people who are giving back to society. But I mean, his talks in 2000 to 2006 were not giving back to society.
What are your favorite foods and things to do in Wisconsin?
Favorite foods. So I do follow kind of a diet just so I can stay in ring shape, so I can look decent in tights. But if that were suspended, it would be the stereotypical Wisconsin shit: fish fries and cheese curds.
Oh,
What's the thing you got? Well, we like whenever her dad comes to visit his family, he brings us those sausages,
summer sausages.
and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, and here's another thing about Wisconsin. So when I
And
traveled,
the
What's that?
cheese. And the cheese.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I traveled down to what I call the asshole of America, Atlanta, Georgia, and I worked down there. And I ordered pizza fries. So we're at a pizza place. Okay, so up here, what pizza fries are is it's like a pizza with no sauce, but they put the sauce on the side. So you dip the pizza stick in the sauce like you're dipping a fry in ketchup. That's why they're called pizza fries.
Okay.
What I got down there was fries with cheese, sauce, and pepperonis on it, like French fries that they.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's Atlanta for you. Seriously. I don't care who I'm offending. If you're from Atlanta, Atlanta is the asshole of America. I hate that city.
I used to live there for about a year, so.
So know it's dirty, it's gross, people are mean.
Back in the day when I lived there, it was actually somewhat clean, but yeah, I've heard stories.
The traffic there is horrendous.
Well, yeah. But yeah.
It's kind of funny because so there are mass transit systems called the MARTA.
Yep.
That is my sister's name. So of course while I'm riding the MARTA what all the boys were saying to me. Oh, you're from Wisconsin. You're riding the MARTA.
Did they ever tell it? Did you ever hear what the different phrases of what MARTA stood for?
Yes.
I'm not going to repeat it on air because it would be bad. But
yeah, no, I know exactly the one you're getting at. But yes, I've heard those before.
Yeah, when I first heard them from an ex's father or whatever when I lived down there, that he had mentioned a couple of them to me, and I just cracked up because it was so funny and it made sense. So
it does.
Well, I will say this much: Atlanta is the hellhole, but I would think that the butthole of that hellhole would be Memphis, Tennessee.
Dude, I had so much fun in Memphis, though. It's like we were talking off air. I can't repeat what I did on Beale Street, but I came a mouse's butt hair close to getting arrested that night. That was. I didn't have that much fun at Atlanta.
So when you're not kicking ass in the ring, what do you do outside the ring?
I'm actually pretty boring outside of the ring. I hang out with if I'm not hanging out with my children, I try to hang out with my buddies. Like a big shout out to Chaos, Josh Yeager. He and Schwartzman, they're two of my best friends in real life. Otherwise, I write. Like I'm in the process of writing a book right now, actually about the life of the superstar Gimmick. And I don't know, I'm just a little too old to go out and party. If when the superstar book comes out, you'll understand what I mean. Because between being a radio DJ and a strip club manager, I've done enough partying, I think, for 3 lifetimes.
I think that's pretty weird. When once you get older, you become like, I was like, hey, let's go out to the bar. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm at the bar. And all of a sudden it's like 9 o'clock. You're like, yeah, I'm going home.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Right. Right. Or you have to nap. You have to nap at 6.
You don't have the energy to sleep up, to stay up all night and party like you used to anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I have to nap. If we're gonna go out and it's later than 9:30, I'm definitely taking a nap at 6.
That's what we do. If we decide we want to go out later on or whatever, do something, we're like, screw it, let's just take a nap for a little bit. We don't have anything else to do. Take a nap, and then afterwards we can be up all night.
But see, it's weird because when I get in the wrestling ring, I don't feel like I'm older than 35. I that adrenaline kicks in. I just don't know what it is. You can't describe it until you have been in there and you feed off of a live crowd. I just can't describe that feeling.
I know that feeling is something that I think that's the reason why sometimes Cena and The Rock come back because they can't get that on the set of a movie. It's that
No.
reaction. It's that.
No, it's more or less just they just get that good money.
Well, they also get the good money too. Yeah, obviously. But so
Last one.
last big question here. Then we're gonna go to the rapid fire and the fan questions. When you used to DJ and was a strip club owner, do you have any stories from your time in that?
So the strip club stories, there's not many that can air on YouTube, obviously. One of my favorite radio stories is so I kind of came up in the radio industry like how I came up in wrestling. I started as I started as just a peon, you know what I mean, and worked my way up to the afternoon guy. But once I was the afternoon guy, you've heard of Disturbed, right?
Yeah.
The band Disturbed. Okay. So Disturbed was playing and Hinder was actually opening for him. That's when Hinder had their big song Lips of an Angel. And so they were still kind of coming up. Their video hadn't hit TV yet, but I decided to smoke some weed and go shot for shot with the drummer of Hinder. Well, the party went back to their tour bus because when you're in radio, you can hang out with them behind the scenes. The next thing I know, I woke up and I'm like, why? Oh my God, this is the worst hangover. The room it feels like it's moving. It doesn't even feel like it's spinning. Well, Kev, the room was fucking moving because I was passed out on their tour bus in St. Louis, Missouri, and I had to be on the air in 2 hours back in Wisconsin. So I passed out drinking and partying on their tour bus, and they just forgot about me and had to take actually a Greyhound back. Luckily, I worked in a business where that is like that story saved my job. You know what I mean? But if I was doing 9 to 5, that never would have worked.
I have a story about Hinder too because we saw them live with Fury the Dead Man, but we also met them in person. But I also worked a security show with them once, and I was the one that was guarding their door. If you didn't have a lantern, you ain't going back there. Well, I can tell you this much: standing there at their door, I got a few contact buzz. I can just tell you that much. I mean, it's like
they had this thing, Kev. So now, mind you, I'm not condoning drug use if it's not legal in your state. If it is legal in your state, by all means, do it. So they had this contraption for weed that it was like a paint can almost, but a tube came up to a gas mask. So they lit like a pound of weed in this paint can, and then you'd put the gas mask on, and the object was to see how long you stayed under this gas mask. I think that's what did me in at that show, but that could have been what you smelled. They had a name for that freaking thing. I can't remember what it was.
Man, I mean, I've smoked before and everything like that, but this weed was the most powerful thing I've ever smelled before. And
it was probably that damn contraption because seriously, Kev, they put more weed in that contraption than you see. It was like Tony Montana's like weed. You know what I mean? Like just
I got about zero over her, man. Jeez. I don't know, because I told her because I came back and she picked me up after work and she's like, "Why you got a smile on your face for?" I'm like, "I just feel good."
Maybe you should do it more often. Not that I was encouraging it or anything, but
those guys did live the rock star life. If y'all have never seen Hinder before, they do. The lead singer's not the lead singer no more, but obviously they lived that life.
Oh yeah, the other band that really lived the rock star lifestyle, because there's been tons of bands I hung out with, like Megadeth, and Dave Mustaine's actually very, very cool because he played a really small show in Wausau, Wisconsin, which is right in the center of the state. But the biggest dicks I've ever been around that lived that rock star lifestyle was Nickelback.
Really?
Yep. Chad Kroeger behind the scenes. I mean, it was just awkward because there was like, I don't know if it was his wife or his significant other. There was partner swapping going on. It just made things very awkward. Yes. I was not a part of it, but I'm just saying, like, being there, it was like on Boogie Nights. That's what their tour bus was like. Boogie Nights. I mean, just like genitals are just getting whipped out left and right.
Oh wow!
Are you sure Ric Flair wasn't on that bus too?
Woo!
I will be honest with you. I don't know about you, Xavier, but I always wanted one of those Ric Flair robes. I don't know why. I just do, because it's just one of those things where I'm like, it'd be cool to have a Ric Flair robe, go out of the shower, and just go, woo!
See, I actually had one made. I wore it at U2 Mania, and it is fun. They are fun. I'm not gonna lie. That has been used before to impress a lady or two.
We'll go back to a fan question. Ryan asks you, name some wrestlers that should have been champion but never got the belt.
That should have been like the world's champion. That should be
Yeah.
limited to world's title.
Yeah.
So if we're talking WWF, the biggest one I can think of is Ravishing Rick Rude. Rick Rude should have beat Warrior at SummerSlam 1990. Jake the Snake Roberts. In any promotion, Jake the Snake Roberts, hands down, should have won some kind of world title. I know why they didn't give it to him, because when you're a strong enough wrestling character, you don't need a belt. You know, like a lot of times the belt is, I hate to use this word because it pisses some people off. A lot of times it's used as a prop. And there's two ways that a belt means something. Either the guy before you built that title up, or you, like what with Steve Austin in 97, he built the title back up again. And Jake didn't need to do that, but could you imagine, Kev, Jake as world's heavyweight champion in WWF? You know what I mean? Like, just the things he could have done with that. He had such great wrestling psychology.
I think if they would have put it on him in 91 when he was a heel and he had that Cobra and he was hanging out with Undertaker, that would have been perfect.
Exactly. And that could have, I mean, there's so many storylines that could have spun out of that. I mean, Taker could have face turned on him. You know what I mean? Wanting the title, because he beat Hogan for it before any of that happened.
I felt like Scott Hall should have been world champion at least once. Before he got all messed up, Scott Hall was really great in the ring. Like
Kurt Hennig and Scott Hall are two people who should have been, but were never given the chance. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because outside the ring they lived fast. And a lot of times promoters, if you they don't really trust you if you live fast. Do you know what I mean by living fast? Like partying until like 2 a.m. and not knowing if you're going to be at a show.
The guys used to do that and they used to invite me, and I'm like, hey guys, man, I'm going home to game, or I'm going back to the gym. You guys can do y'all shit. I ain't need a part. Man, I did have some shots and stuff like that, but I was never one of those guys that would be out there till 4 or 5 in the morning and then have housekeeping.
I'll tell you what, it messes with you, because when I was in at the strip club, that was my life every morning till 5 in the morning. And it really screws with you health wise, mentally, everything. I don't know how those guys did it back in the day.
So I got this is a friend of mine here, the Prodigal Hill, asks you a comment question here, but favorite Spider-Man, Tom Holland, Maguire, or Andrew Garfield?
Holy shit, that's a hard one. First of all, I'm a humongous comic book fan. Here, I'll spin the...
Love it.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Okay.
I don't know. You know, I don't want to do any spoilers yet with Spider-Man 3, or this new Spider-Man. What is it called? No Way Home. I don't want to give any spoilers away for that just yet, but it kind of changed my mind about stuff. Because until I saw that movie, Tom Holland was by far my favorite Spider-Man. However, after seeing that movie, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is pretty awesome.
He'll always be my favorite. So,
see, I don't know, like, he just kind of seemed whiny as a Spider-Man. I don't mean that to sound offensive, but that's not how I would have seen, like, view Peter Parker growing up reading the comics. But after watching that movie, it kind of retconned stuff. Do you know what I mean, Mel? Like just the way I think I just made a huge spoiler. But anyway, after seeing that, like it was amazing how that all that shit was portrayed.
So speaking of spoiler, we went 2 years ago. We went to go see Endgame, and Mel was watching. She was looking on something online that had nothing to do with the movie, and some douchebag says Tony Stark died.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was looking at some local news channel website or whatever, and there were comments in the bottom of this article that I was reading, and just in the middle of these random comments, some douchebag decided to say, "Well, yeah, Iron Man dies at the end of Endgame." Just randomly, and from that point on, anytime a movie that I want to see comes out, or anytime a show that I want to see comes out, I don't look at anything online previous to that. I don't do
You probably
anything.
wanted to punch that bastard in the neck.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and he was thinking to himself, like, well, now you already know what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah, I know, but when I did see them, see that part, because Iron Man's always been my favorite, of the Marvel, but I just liked sitting in the theater, and I was just trying to keep my composure and everything, but still, it was just the fact that some asshole online decided to give away that part because they have nothing else better to do.
Well, that actually happened to me with Phantom Menace.
Really?
So we were in college and we were all excited about Phantom. You know what I mean? Because, God, growing up in the 80s, I mean, Han Solo was like the man. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like everybody's excited for Star Wars. We actually skipped a final and waited in line to get tickets. And then at that ticket buying thing, they gave you a pack of like trading cards.
Yep.
So we opened the trading cards, and one of the pictures was, the final duel. And then you flip over the back, and it gave away the whole end to both of us. That fucking trading card gave away the whole end of the movie. Said after Darth Maul or after Qui-Gon gets killed, but it said the whole goddamn thing. I was so mad.
I mean, that is just you don't. I mean, like I've been to a couple of Star Wars movies. I remember when going to Revenge of the Sith, sitting there for 2 hours, waiting for the movie to begin. Me and my friend were watching these guys dress up and doing lightsaber fights in the middle of the theater until the movie began.
That's correlating that to pro wrestling. That's what I mean by the magic. Star Wars, like what you're describing, has that magic where it's just like it's its own separate universe that you can live in and escape all the bullshit of, working all day to do whatever you need to do to survive.
Let's see. So Joshua says Jay Bowski on his stage is always the zone before going on.
So that's my best friend. He deserves some kind of like trophy because he sees me at my absolute worst and craziest. And that's what he means by that. Cause like when I get stressed, I go batshit crazy. What is this next question? That one of the honky tonk man?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that actually, I think that would have been cool because 97, they had that shit angle with Rockabilly. Do you remember that, Kev?
Yes, I do. I remember that.
Which like fizzled, but Disco Inferno, my God, he was an all around great wrestler. He had a great look. And if they would have done something with Honky as his manager, because Honky, despite as much of a prick as he is in real life, he's a great talker. I think that could have done something wonderful for him.
One of my favorite Honky Tonk Man moments was him and the Hart Foundation beating up on Savage and Miss Elizabeth going to get Hogan.
Yes.
And they cracked him over the head with the nail.
Yes. Dude, yeah, that was good. And you're almost crying because you're like, come on, stop. Are they going to hit Elizabeth?
Are you a football fan by any chance?
I am a fan. I'm not a huge fan, but I am a football fan.
Madden?
Madden?
Yeah.
I have played. So here's the thing with Madden. Like I used to play it until the year it got really complex. do you know what I mean? Where you had to start like kind of in high school and then progress. But I love the Madden
you know who
series.
John Madden was? He passed away today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we just got news about it. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, I know, right? Is any John Madden fans out there?
You know what's interesting? I used to run the WWE 2K games. I actually used to run a little E-Fed. And even then, some of those guys are prima donnas. They always like, I want the belt. I want to be in the title match. I want the belt. I want the title match. And I'm just like, what about giving?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I always try to run it old school ways too, because I used to have the ropes with the red and the white and the blue, and I always like that old school feel of. I don't really like all the colorful shit that they have out now.
Right. No, I agree with you.
Josh asked, "What is the largest crowd Superstar has ever wrestled in front of?"
1,500. So that's the largest I've wrestled in front of. That's not the largest I've been in front of, but that I've actually competed in ring was 1,500. That was against actually a guy named Adrian Lynch. He's an indie guy, but that show drew huge. That's when I was in radio and we did a cross promotion.
Josh says, "Can you take the Memphis Man out of the Superstar, but not take the Superstar out of the Memphis Man?"
Okay, so what he's getting at here is certain promoters, like, okay, Superstar is a cocky pretty boy, right? So certain promoters they already have that, so they don't want another iteration of that. So, and even back in the Backyard days, Josh and I would portray several different characters. So I was either Memphis Man, which was a huge ripoff of the Honky Tonk Man, the blonde Elvis, or Superstar.
You know what's weird? Where I got my training at first was that me and my brother used to come out to our own themes. We made paper championships, and we would actually call our matches. And then I got into the backyard wrestling scene, and a lot of it, that's where I learned my craft at. And when I got into wrestling, the trainer looked at me and said, "Are you sure you've never done this before?" I was like, "No, I just wrestled at home and backyard wrestling." He was like, "Your timing is perfect." I was like, "That's because I studied. I watched VHS and tapes." And
well, see, what you're describing is a lot like what Josh and I did. So we were actually on the Best of Backyard tape from the late 90s, but our Fed got noticed because we didn't do the flaming tables or thumbtacks up the asshole. It was all storyline driven. So if it was Superstar and Superstar and Chaos have been in existence since the Backyard days. So if it was Superstar versus Chaos, there was a distinct build up to a match, just like it was on TV. It wasn't just like throwaway hardcore stuff. And that's what promoters like, because you start understanding timing, like you said, with moves and the business.
well, before we go back to a fan question, I'm gonna ask you a rapid fire question. What's your favorite holiday? What's the Superstar's favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday is definitely Halloween.
Right. So why Halloween? It's
it's the whole magic. I mean, Christmas is magical, but the magic of Halloween, it's like you see people like high school principals dress up like Dracula. Would a high school principal dress up like an elf? No. But
Maybe.
Halloween has that magic behind it where it's like everybody wants to participate, even though it's a very pagan holiday. It's great. Plus, I love horror movies. I love the paranormal. So it's just my kind of holiday.
I don't know if you noticed about me, Xavier. I never told you this, man, but I used to be a ghost tour guide, and we actually have some experience in the paranormal.
Oh, I would, if I come down and visit, I'd love to do that with you guys, because my kids.
Got some photos. We got some photos from some of my customers
from a long time ago.
It's a long time ago, but there was some. I'm actually what you considered. I'm an empath, actually. So,
oh, nice.
We have a friend who's a psychic medium, and I started believing because my grandmother passed away in 2010, and then months later, my friend never met her, and she started bringing up She's like, "Hey, your grandmother's here." She started bringing up things that Mel didn't know. And
Really?
the eeriest thing she said was the next time all the family would get together is next year when a family member dies. Fast forward November 2011, my uncle dies of pancreatic cancer.
Holy shit.
And ever since that time, I've been like, "Whoa, all right, we're on to something." But we are horror junkies. She likes watching those.
I like watching the bad horror movies, like the ones that are kind of considered what's the word for it?
Dude, like the killer couch one.
Huh?
There's one about a killer recliner. I can't remember the name of it. But
No.
it's like
The kind of movies that I like watching are banned.
like gory or just like bad acting?
No, they're banned. Like
Oh, banned. Oh, okay, sorry.
right.
Like for example, she likes watching ones that you have the killer butt fucking a corpse. I mean,
that reminds me. I saw one like that. It's a French film.
Serbian film?
Yeah, like High Fidelity. Not.
High Fidelity, that's one of them too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite disturbing, that movie.
Yeah.
In fact, as a kid, we watched in the early 80s Camp Sleepaway.
oh yeah, we met her actually.
Dude, like seeing a penis, like that little, like as the killer, that was crazy. I just gave away the ending. Sorry.
Speaking of horror, though, I used to work at the haunted attractions. I played Michael. We did our own horror film. Michael was Jason. But we are planning on doing a Friday the 13th
Eventually, if we have enough
based
time
in
to do it, I just,
based in Christmas time. So
Yeah.
we're going to
nice.
try to. So
we're hoping to get it off the ground.
I've always wanted to play Jason once, so it's kind of my chance to get a chance to do some kills. And Nate brought up some good ideas. He was about stringing somebody up on a Christmas light and doing some stuff.
Oh,
yeah. And
So your thoughts? Go ahead.
so Josh asked you, so what are your thoughts on guys breaking their backs in front of 15 guys in the gym versus two guys in the 80s pacing around each other for 5 minutes before even locking up?
That's a great question. Well, there's psychology around both of them, and I think that's what Josh is getting at. Psychology is a lost art. So breaking your backs in front of 15 guys in a gym, you're getting some valuable psychological training for that. It depends how you're breaking your back. Like obviously not doing like 6 Canadian destroyers outside the ring. But if you're putting on like a barn burner 5-star match in front of 15 people, I mean, that's something you can parlay to when you get into a bigger promotion. So I like that. I don't like a lot of the high spots, Kev. Let me just clarify. Like if Josh was getting at the high spots, and he knows this, I hate high spots. The pacing around, the 80 style pacing around for 5 minutes before locking up, if you are smart at it and good at it, you can make a lot of money for doing nothing.
That's why I think, to be honest with you, man, if me and you got into the ring, if I come to Rockford and me and you got into the ring, it would be like that. Because if I was the heel, I would basically look like you. I would actually act like you pulled my hair, roll out of the ring for a minute, pace around, basically like threatening to hit the referee and just. I mean, I'm one of those old school guys where I would be like, let me lock up here for a minute, and then all of a sudden, then kind of go like, nah. No.
Yeah, it's an art form because that's how a lot of the guys made their money. You know what I mean? And if they were good at it, you didn't have to jump through take it like Cody Rhodes. You didn't have to go through a flaming table. You could pace around for 5 minutes if you were good at your craft.
I go back to what Hogan told Nick on his son on Hogan Knows Best on an episode. He said, look, if you want to, it's about the body language. You could drop one elbow and get a reaction, or you may have to drop 15 elbows to get that same reaction of beating your brains out. So,
right.
And me and you were talking about this. And if any of y'all don't think that Hogan can't wrestle, go back and watch his New Japan stuff. You guys would be in.
God, is his New Japan, especially it's right after he lost to Warriors, that early 90s run in New Japan. where Hogan felt like he had something to prove, I think, to himself. Holy shit, he's doing hurricanranas and drop kicks and suicide. He did a suicide dive in a match I saw.
Yep. People don't think about that. I mean, like Hogan had a different style in New Japan. He didn't use the leg drop either. He had the axe bomber.
Yep.
And like it was actually in that No Holds Barred movie. He used the whole thing. So a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, if you guys don't think Hogan can't wrestle, and I know Bret Hart likes to hate on him. Bret Hart's an old bitter old.
Bret Hart, like what we talked about at the beginning of the interview, Bret Hart is. I'm not going to take anything away from Bret Hart because I modeled half of my repertoire off of him. But Bret Hart is if you open the dictionary to living the gimmick, it's going to be a 3-page ad of Bret Hart living the gimmick because he thinks it's real. Shawn Mykeals wasn't lying. He thinks it's all real.
Yep. Now, Nate, Josh said Nate the effing Great isn't even the best wrestling podcaster out of Central Wisconsin. Whoa. I don't know what you have to say about that, Nate.
I think there's going to be a feud between Chaos and Nate coming up here soon.
Hey, I would love to see it.
I just want you guys to know when you guys come to the facility, I'll have Body Stars t-shirts ready for you. So don't side with Nate the effing Great.
If I saw Nate the effing Great, I would spear him out of his boots.
And I would pay to see that. I'm not lying. I'll pay to see that.
She will tell you I'm intense. I'm not a very good.
But I'm worse.
Want me to say this much? If she got her legs wrapped around Nate, she would choke him. Bad.
Yeah, I did. I've heard stories, Mel, about your work. So just know that you're in good company. You'd be very welcome with Kate and Courtney.
Like, yeah, I definitely took my craft back then seriously, and I had a lot of power behind this. So
the great thing about teaching her was the fact that she's not very good at like members. She wasn't very good.
I'm not good at memorizing lines, but when it comes down to actually physically getting down to the nitty gritty of physicality, I'm
right.
I'm pretty good at that. So
yeah, I'll give you. There's one thing Nate is good at. I'll tell you that. Nate is like a savant when it comes to memorizing stuff. Like I just don't get how he can do that.
I noticed
some
that.
people can pick it up, some people can't. I'm one of the ones that can't. I
no, me neither. Because
over again. So
I'm trained, especially with wrestling. If you're in a headlock and they're not responding, you don't keep doing the damn headlock, and you don't do the next spot. You try to find something to work. But
right,
Nate, if a match is laid out for Nate and it's 50 spots, he's like Rain Man counting the fucking toothpicks. He'll memorize that thing in a few seconds.
That's actually a good thing because that's very rare to have.
Right.
And Nate's also a pretty good talker. I see him on the mic and everything like that. He was trying to intimidate me, and I'm sort of thinking, man, you're not going to intimidate a 6'2", 300-pound guy. You're not going to intimidate me.
Well,
and actually, so Josh and I both have been working with him, and Josh actually has been working with him a lot. Josh Chaos is the best character promo guy I've ever met in the business, like personally met.
So I know this guy here, AEW Slam Zone asks, where do you see the wrestling show in 5 or 10 years?
Honestly, the way they're going, I think it's going to be pretty big because this is the way the business is going. You said something that reaffirms it is you're sick of the product you're being force-fed on television. So you're trying to digest other mediums, and the medium that Matt and Kate have with YouTube is perfect because it's easily accessible to absolutely everybody. The character, and they do their show in mind of character development. So if they keep going the way they're going, I think it can be pretty big.
Now Josh asks, which locker room? Oh yeah, here we go. Which locker room is more talented, the TWS guys or the CWA boys.
So the ECWA, just for a little reference, is a fed that Josh and I were in that we actually both became the head bookers for eventually. But that locker room was filled with roughnecks. So yeah, Ryan, ECWA. I would have to say ECWA just because they were all trained our style. Now the TWS locker room is a different story. There's like JB, incredibly talented individual. Courtney, of course, that's why I sided with them. That's why they're on my body stars. It's just that ECWA locker room was like an old school WWE locker room. There were legit shooters in that dressing room.
Now here's a good one for you. What kind of music do you usually jam to?
It's really dependent. Like, I know this is cliche, it's dependent on mood, but 90% of the time it's some form of either metal or Elvis. I freaking love Elvis.
Me too. Yep. Grew up around Elvis Presley, grew up around the old country music guys like Johnny Cash and Hank Sr. and all that. So yeah,
and Conway Twitty. I love Conway Twitty. You know, a lot of those old school guys, and they were showmen too. That's what I like about heavy metal and that old school outlaw country is they're not just standing up in front of a microphone playing an instrument. You know what I mean? There's some kind of sex appeal or show going on besides it.
So we got Michael Swanson saying, "Look at the fruitcake superstar that screwed over my boy Patrick McMichaels."
So obviously, he is a fan. I have to applaud because that's probably the one fan of Patrick McMichaels, because I got so many fan letters thanking me that I put Patrick McMichaels down. I mean, I had my boy JB help me, who's awesome. Shout out to you, JB. But yeah, I applaud you for being the one fan that Patrick McMichael has.
Let's see what we got here. This question right here. When is Superstar coming back to Illinois?
So besides the fact that I grew up in Wisconsin before I moved to California, I have that rivalry with Illinois. So immediately I hated going to Illinois. But I'm going to suck it up and do it for all the fans, because there are fans there of the Body Stars, and that's going to be on the 15th of January. We'll be back in town for the Screw City Rumble.
So the Screw City Rumble, like for people that don't know what that's going to be like, is it kind of like the Royal? Is it kind of like the regular Royal Rumble? The winner gets a shot at the champion.
Yes, it's but it's 20 man instead of 30. It's 20. Just for length of the show, because it's going to be aired on their wrestling show. You know, their bi-weekly wrestling show.
Yeah,
and there's a few other surprises that I'm aware of that are going to be involved with that. So a 20 man, I'll keep it close to a 40-minute mark so that there still is time for Nate to run his long-ass winded speech about how great of a champion he is.
So Miss Hughes asks, is it Xavier Mykeals single?
Xavier Mykeals is single and will always be single.
Let's see. What is the Superstar's favorite snack from Josh?
The Superstar's favorite snack. You know, like late at night, I like snacking on popcorn, like the air popped popcorn. That's what I've come to like. I don't know. Otherwise, it's like what anybody else likes, like bar food, like the mini tacos. If I lived in a perfect world where I didn't gain a pound, it would be mini tacos and pizza fries all night, baby.
Awesome. Nice.
Now, Josh also asked again, would you consider blading an important part of wrestling in 2021, or have you ever bladed?
So to answer the second part first, so it's in context, yes, I have bladed. And it was a fucking disaster because nobody taught me how to blade. They just gave me the blade. And somebody should, here's the thing, anybody up-and-comers, have somebody teach you how to blade, because there's a distinct right and wrong way to do it. I did it the wrong way, and I bled like a you know what I mean? Like a stuck pig. I think there is way too much of it. Just like we said earlier about the table spots, if there's going to be bleeding in a match, then there should only be bleeding in one match. Or if somebody's going to bleed, only let that guy bleed. Let it be special. Now, when Josh and I were coming up, if you didn't bleed, you got hard weighed. You know what I mean by that? So if you bladed and you weren't bleeding enough, they would hard weigh you, which means you'd twist your fist. You wouldn't do a working punch. You'd actually punch the wound, and twist your fist to open it up.
I remember that. As a matter of fact, I got like a little, can't really see it, but I didn't blade very well. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one.
Very well. I wasn't taught to blade, and I ended up doing it like a stuffed pig. I was bleeding profusely. Probably most blood I've ever seen.
It's scary too, because like the veins are so close to the skin up here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when I went to the doctor, because I had to go get stitches for this. So Josh's girlfriend at the time took me to the doctor, and I was out of it, and she wouldn't answer any questions of the doctor because, she wasn't my girlfriend. But the story I came up with in my blood lost addled brain is I used the fucking Doc Brown gimmick with how did I get this cut? You know what I mean? Because it was a huge cut. So I told him I was changing a light bulb in the bathroom and hit my head on the toilet paper dispenser and had the idea for the flex capacitor.
That's hilarious.
So Josh asked, if you can go back in the time of your career, what would you change, if anything? That's a good question.
I think that's a tough one, because if I could go back and change anything, I would not get out of the business when I got out and went to be a family man. But there's a catch-22 there. Then, like, I wouldn't have my children, which is like the most important part of my life. So I guess if I had a gun to my head and somebody telling me to make that decision, I wouldn't change anything, because if I didn't have my kids, I wouldn't be the man I am.
Miss Hughes asked, would you ever consider doing a makeup tutorial?
A lot of stuff sells, so I've actually been considering doing a OnlyFans makeup tutorial. That might, you never know what else it would involve, because dude, you can do anything on OnlyFans and make money.
So Joshua asked, why did you kick your best friend out of the Body Stars?
Because he has more important things to do than hang out with Xavier Mykeals.
This is very true. Now, the original Body Stars from the 1996. This was asked by Ryan.
So the original incarnation of it was Superstar and Chaos. It was a tag team. However, it started getting bigger as we got more people involved with the ECWA. So, now listen to these names, because I told the guys at TWS these names, and they were like, gag me with the spoon, brother. But Superstar was the leader. My right-hand man was Sexy Saul Funk, Flex the Body Rhinestone, and Hot Stuff Jason Payne. That was the incarnation right after Josh and I.
It actually fits with the Body Stars. I mean, honestly, it does. I mean, I don't look at that like you. I look at that as that's creative.
But yeah, see, back in the day, though, everybody had a gimmick. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like Steve Jones versus Larry Patterson. You know what I mean? People didn't use real names in that day and age.
I'm so pissed the fact that Kevin Nash called himself Big Sexy when I wanted to call myself that, but that's okay. But so he said, so Josh asked, who is your man in Street Fighter 2?
My man in Street Fighter 2. That's a great. So Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter was, do you remember back in the day, Kev? Like, that was the game to play.
That Mortal Kombat? Yes, absolutely.
Right. So I would have to say, God, I loved E Honda or Blanca. Those are my two guys. I don't know if it's because you could spam their moves. You know what I mean? Whether it be the electricity or the 1,000-hand punch, but.
And Josh also asked Star Wars or Star Trek, which I think I already know the answer to this one, but
It's going to be just for nostalgia's sake, Star Wars. You know what I mean? Because growing up, I mean, if you weren't a Han Solo fan, you weren't part of my circle. And I actually didn't start liking Star Trek until I was older, like in high school-ish. You know what I mean? So I would go with Star Wars. Definitely not the new Star Wars, not that new trilogy, but episodes 1 through 6, definitely.
so here's a good question for you. I know you're a comic fan, but if there's any comic character from DC or Marvel, who fits your personality the best?
I would have to say Lobo
That's a good
from
one.
DC.
That's a good one, yeah.
And it's not the fact that I can hold my own in a fight. I'm not as good of a fighter as him, but the reason I pick him is I have the I don't give a fuck attitude of Lobo. You know what I mean? If you hear, this is me, this is who I am. If you don't like it, fuck you.
That's how she is.
Yeah.
I think if you could put three superheroes with me. You could put Batman, Wolverine, and Hulk with me. Like right now, you're seeing the Bruce Banner, but if you start pissing me off to a point where there's no coming back, the green guy shows up.
Right. No, I hear you. My brother is like that too, so I totally understand what you're getting at.
So I mean, let's see what else did he. Josh asked if you could work with one deceased wrestler, who would it be, and why is it Earthquake?
So Josh knows I have an unnatural love of John Tenta. Like I really think he was 25 years ahead of his time. For his size, that man could move like he was a lightweight. You know what I mean? Like Vince never let him do it, but there is footage of him in Japan doing drop kicks. I mean, this is a almost 400-pound man throwing it like a Randy Orton drop kick. So I would love to work Tenta, but I think the guy I'd want to work like the absolute most is probably Macho Man Randy Savage.
Now, I've been told by Matt and Kate that you have one of the perfect Chris Jericho impersonations.
So let's something about that Jericho impersonation. That took Matt and I a little bit to pull off, but we did it. Like I'd have to take off my bandana. I don't think I could do it now on the spot, but it took us. It was fun to do. I didn't think I could do it. Shout out to Matt he's the one who suggested it. He's like, we think you could do Jericho. So it took a few tries and then we hit it.
Is there any impersonations you can do? Because there's a couple of wrestlers that I can do. It gets some laughs. I can actually do Taker. I can do well, you're damn right. Stone Cold Steve Austin. If I went to TWS, what? I'd look at Nate right in the face, drop him on that damn cheeseburger neck that he calls a dime. Bam! Stunner.
See, the only one that I can really do is Vince. Like that's the only one I can really do like off the top of my head. Like, if I go to the TWS, we'll bring in Victoria and Jacqueline and get those chocolate titties. Yeah.
Well, I actually used to do this thing back in high school. I had to create like two wrestlers that I liked. So I was doing a puppet show with The Undertaker and Paul Bear. So I had one right here and one with Undertaker, and I would go, "Oh yes, my Undertaker, the souls of all mankind." And it was just a funny thing. It was just a funny thing because I was like, "Wow, you were able to do them both." I'm like, "Yeah."
That is awesome.
And then we get the whole Yeah, I'm thinking that I should get into the ring.
There's a great. So Josh actually turned me onto this. There's a cartoon called College University,
Yeah.
and there's some good Macho Man stuff in there because that's the last thing Macho Man did before he died. He voiced a character in that. So if you have time, look up College University, the Macho Man episode. It's great. It's great.
So Josh says, should Vader have become WWE champion at SummerSlam 96? WWF. Well, same thing. Why did that pay-per-view night end in a bad note in the stomach?
So what he's referring to, so that was when we were coming up, and he was a huge Vader fan. Yes, in hindsight now, internet world and Josh, Vader should have won the title that night. He worked a totally different style than Shawn, and Shawn had the ear of Vince, so that kind of bit Vader in the ass. But it was a great match, but the bite in the stomach. So what happened, Kev, is I was a Shawn Mykeals mark. He was a Vader mark, and we're best friends. So, like what happens when best friends disagree to a certain point? We got into an actual fight. And he had me down in a cradle, and the only thing I could do to get out of this fucking cradle was to bite him in the stomach. So he legit beat me until I bit him in the stomach.
Well, I have just a couple of rapid fire questions coming up here now. What's your take on intergender wrestling? Do you think it has a place, or do you think it belongs? Do you think WWE should start doing it, or?
I think as long as you set the groundwork that it's okay. And let me preface this like this. So Victoria, the wrestler, Victoria Vachon, she could kick any man's ass in real life. But what I mean by setting it up that it's okay is right now the way the WWE product is going is they are distinctly marketing the men as stronger than the women. So if they would ever do an intergender match, it's not going to be a believable match because they're marketing the men to be stronger than the women. I don't think that's the case. I work at the indies, and most of the most talented wrestlers in the indies are females. And with the way this generation and this day and age kicked the door down, I do think intergender wrestling should be a norm.
Going back into intergender wrestling, I thought that Impact Wrestling did it well with Tessa Blanchard and can't think of his name at the moment, but
my cousin Sami Callihan.
Exactly, Sami Callihan, which is what Josh just asked. Who's your favorite member of Impact Wrestling, and why is your cousin? So
Sami Callihan's my real last name is Johnston. His real last name is Johnston. Distant relation, but yes, we're related. I loved that, but it's a shit. See, Tessa flaked. She flaked out at the height of her popularity, which I don't understand, because her dad, she should have learned from her dad not to do that, because now look at her. No promotion is going to touch her with a 16-foot pole because she essentially screwed that promoter.
Now she's on that Wow Women of Wrestling thing now again. So yeah.
But no, she proved that girls can hang, and that's what I mean. Impact set the precedent that girls our guys aren't. We don't believe in this misogyny bullshit that WWE does. The guys and the girls are on an equal playing field.
To be honest with you, that's what Mel likes the most. She likes actually doing the mixed wrestling better than she did with the females because she's intense, and when she'd rather have an intense match with a man than
no. I would just rather have an intense match with someone who can match my same level of intensity,
right?
And such. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're male or female, as long as they, can match my same level of intensity. So, because I'm pretty brutal physically. I really am. I don't know why, but I am. I don't think it has anything to do personally wise. It's just I dislike to. I'm vicious. He's afraid of me. I mean, I can literally whack him in the back hard, even with a soft pillow, and it hurts. So, that gives you the indication of the intensity.
Anytime she
am
does that with the
just
pillow,
very hardcore in my efforts. So,
and anytime she hits me with that pillow, I start to think, what would she do? How would it be if she hit me with a steel chair? And then I started to think about it, and I'm like, that is some scary ass shit when she's.
Yeah.
And that's why you guys are perfect fits for the Body Stars. Because we'd welcome you with open arms. You'd fit in great with Courtney Mill.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
We've already discussed stuff and everything.
So
Josh,
Josh,
I said it doesn't really matter to me.
So Josh asked if your time at TWS would get you recognized, would you go to work for WWE, AEW, or Impact? And which would you prefer?
So to answer, yes. I mean, it would be stupid. I mean, I have a gripe against WWE. I'd hate doing it, but it would be stupid to not put my brand out on a worldwide level. If I had an option, I would definitely do Impact, just because it's more of a style that I know well and can execute well. AEW is great, but I'm not that type of a high flyer. You know, I don't do that many flips and spins. I love AEW's product over WWE, but last choice would be WWE. Because they'd probably change the gimmick and make me Farty McFartleton coming down to queef noises. Who the fuck knows?
You know what's interesting though is I think WWE watches stuff, because there were some times when we were doing the E-Fed and had some of the guys were doing their characters on the game. There's one character that came to mind, and then all of a sudden I saw WWE do something similar to it. It's almost like they're watching what you do.
Well, they do. They have this thing called the Finkel Report. So there's back in the late 80s, early 90s, Howard Finkel would have his daily Finkel report that he'd give the bigwigs. But now they have people monitoring the internet, and they give a monthly Finkel report to the writers if anybody on the internet has had a good idea. So that is a thing. And actually, they talk more in depth about it on Pritchard's podcast, Something to Wrestle.
Now, let me ask you this. I have a friend who's a big Impact Wrestling fan, and he likes to shit on AEW and mess with them. But AEW always comes back and says, well, Impact doesn't get that many ratings and blah, blah, blah. We had this discussion, and I would like to have your answer because you're an old school guy. Do you think wrestling should go back to the territories?
Oh, God, that's a great question. Yes, because territories, that's where you learn in the territories, because it's beautiful. Like here's an example, Kev. If you and I have a match in Memphis and it sucks, it stinks, we weren't on, like our timing, it was just one of those nights where our timing was off. Well, fans remember shit. In the territory days, we could come up to Illinois, a different territory, and perfect our craft to go back to a different territory. You're also learning from different people in different territories. So yes, I 100% think that the territories should come back.
I think a lot of hate too from Vince, because there's some fans that hate Vince because they feel like he killed the territories and he took away what his dad was doing with other promoters. And to be honest with you, the reason why I really don't like AEW much is because I think Tony Khan's a little piece of shit. That's just me. I mean, I think he's he always likes to tweet out stuff, and then if you say something bad about him, he comes back and you think that bad about me.
Yeah, no, in fact, this is kind of funny. I think it was Patrick McMichael tweeted something to frickin' Jericho, and he blocked Patrick McMichael, tweeted back and blocked him. And I don't see Chris Jericho doing that in his WWF days. Do you know what I mean? You're right. There's a weird stigma about having to always be popular in AEW, but Tony Khan never really understood the promoting aspect of it. I think, now don't get me wrong, Tony Khan's better than Vince. It's the best we frickin' have right now, but a lot of times it seems to me like Tony Khan is a billionaire playing with human toys. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's what I've said. Yes, I've said that on some of my podcast shows. That I've said that it's not the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing. It's the fact that he looks at these wrestlers like his best friend. Like he like, oh, this is my best friend. This is Mark here, you know. And
Right.
instead of look at them as business, and I feel like that he's paying some of these wrestlers way too much money. I don't think Brandy Rhodes deserves to have $2 million a year.
Oh no.
And that's what he's doing. And he's like giving out all this money to everybody. And I gotta ask you this because I know you're a Hogan fan and I'm a Hogan fan, so we have to. Before I wrap this up, I gotta ask you this question. I've had some people here in the wrestling community on the internet, and CM Punk came out during his debut, and he was doing some media thing, and he said that him, Daniel Bryan, and Adam Cole coming into AEW is just as big or bigger than Hogan, Hall, and Nash coming to WCW. And when he said that, I was like, "Are you?" Now I want to come for that screen and slap that beard off your face.
No, you're right. So I guess see, and I've heard younger kids say that too, but they don't know the context. Because like you and I we weren't necessarily adults, but we were old enough to remember the cultural impact that had. So the formation of the NWO. So okay, here's an example. What you were describing, you know, with what they set up with AEW. That the formation of that. If you were outside, if you're not a wrestling fan, you don't know what the fuck we're talking about. You don't know who Adam Cole is, right?
No.
When that whole NWO thing happened, that was on broadcast network news. That was news that Hulk Hogan turned bad and formed the NWO with these two guys. So I don't see the correlation. I don't think it's as big of an impact because they were really blurring the lines back then, especially when Scott Hall first jumped and he was coming through the crowd and he was talking like Razor Ramon. And this is before the dirt sheets were really huge. Like you didn't know if it was real or not real. And then when Hogan joined him, my God, it was on Channel 12 News.
I remember that Larry King and talking on CNN that night, and he's like, you know, this is a very big shocker here. Hulk Hogan has turned heel. And he's the first time he's a bad guy, even though that's not the first time Hogan was a bad guy in his career. But to us, it was, you know, because we didn't, some of us may not got to see him as a bad guy back then. But yeah, I honestly think the internet and the dirt sheets ruin wrestling right now. Like they really do. And they ruin the mystique of what the wrestling show, what the wrestling was about. Because back then, you didn't know that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash left their contract. You just saw Diesel and Razor Ramon inside Nitro. You're like,
yeah, it's ruined a lot of things.
Internet's ruined a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
You know, plus one of the last things Josh said, the best promoter in today's wrestling is Scott D'Amore.
I'd have to agree with him. Yeah, I definitely
I agree with that. I mean, I think that I don't know if you heard the rumor. Mel told me this the other day, but whenever Vince decides to ever retire or take his plunge, the promotion is not going to go to Triple H, Shane, or Stephanie. It's going to Nick Khan.
Yes, and in fact, that is Josh and I actually talk a lot about that because we both know from a business standpoint, especially with a wrestling promotion, when you're about to sell or give it away or do whatever you're going to do with it, you axe all your top talent so that when you sell this, you know, your payout book is only about that big. You know, so I foresee actually the Cock owning it, Peacock.
It's going to be bad.
Well, if
So
that happens, that's going to be all. It's going to be Disney. Like if Nick Khan owns it, he's going to sell it to either Disney or NBC, and then we're going to have Seinfeld wrestling. It's going to be sitcom wrestling.
Where do you see the business in the next 5 or 10 years on television?
Shit. Unless something changes drastically, they're going to keep gravitating towards the younger demographic, because guys who have money to spend are looking for a product outside of the normal means. So until they start giving us a product that is something we like, a storyline that we want to invest ourselves in, and not just flips, flops, and super kicks, I don't know. I don't foresee like the business progressing at all.
I tell people right now the best storyline I see right now is Brock, Paul Heyman, and Roman Reigns.
I have never in my life liked Brock Lesnar until lately. I love this new gimmick of his with the long hair and
the country look. Yeah.
I love it. He should have done this years ago. And it's hilarious. Like when he broke his flip phone trying to show that guy his pictures of a moose he killed. Dude, that's the first time I laughed at a WWE thing in years.
Right now, I look at that and I'm looking at the way they're doing that story and the way they're building toward it. And they did it with Seth Rollins and Edge too, and I thought it was great. Is if you start going from the past to now, you just kind of build them together, and I feel like that's what's lacking on AEW is there's really no storytelling.
Right, there isn't, and because there is some storytelling on AEW. I'm not going to shit on it too much with that, but by and large, what they feature is the Young Bucks super kick party, and it's just like flipping. And I've been to some of those live shows, Kev. I went to a live show with my buddy Ryan, and it is amazing the difference in size when you see an actual old school wrestler compared to these new guys. So you remember, just real quick, because I don't want to take up too much more time, but you remember in the 90s, like Billy Gunn was just like an average size. He was about the same size as Triple H. You know what I mean? And then there were bigger guys than him, like Kane and Taker and Show. Well, when Billy Gunn came out with his sons on that AEW show, he dwarfed everybody that he was competing with in the ring. Like he looked like the size of the Undertaker. He looked like he was a foot taller than the other competitors.
So yeah, I mean, Josh said I think you could argue the Hangman Page rise to the world title was the best long-term story.
It was, and they actually started that like in 2020 almost. You know, Hangman Page, because he was tagging with Kenny Omega for a while during the pandemic, or right before the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yep. And I do remember that. I've never been to an AEW show yet, but I've been to a Impact. I've been to because they used to be in Nashville, and they still are. I remember being in a couple of their shows, and I love when they were in the Asylum here at the fairgrounds in Nashville, because the fairgrounds is really big. Because USWA had Bill Dundee and Jamie Dundee.
Oh yes, those were the days, bro. I love those days.
Right. So I'm kind of more into that. So when I watch wrestling now and I'm seeing them doing like Sayukin Ryu, like chops up in the air and them flipping over here. And I remember watching Stone Cold's podcast, listening to it, and Stone Cold's like, the problem with the business, and he said all wrestling promotions, is none of these guys know when to slow down.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's the perfect statement. Because at that show that Ryan and I went to, that AEW show, you could tell the old school workers compared to the new school guys. Because it just felt like you felt exhausted after the new school guys wrestled, because there was so much.
I'm going to ask you this last question before we go, but this is about Sting. Now, two questions with this. Do you think WWE used Sting right? And two, do you think there should have been an Undertaker and Sting match?
You answered the question how I was going to answer it. So, first of all, no, they used him piss poor. They fed him to Triple H. I don't know if it was just to prove a point. You know what I mean? If it was just to say, "Ha, screw you, we made a bigger star in Triple H." It should have been Taker and Sting because those were the two franchises in the 90s.
You know what's weird too is when I look at some of these interviews with Undertaker. Undertaker said it was never brought up to him. He
No,
doesn't
and
know.
the fans wanted it. I mean, there was two guys like if you would say who WCW, who do you think of? Sting, WWF, Undertaker. You know, that's the way it should have been. I just feel like Triple H wanted to bury him. That's my personal opinion of that WrestleMania match, is they wanted to bury Sting.
And plus, you had the NWO back in Sting, and that just didn't work with me because he hated the NWO.
It should have been the Wolfpack. If anything, it should have been the Wolfpack. And Hogan had nothing to do with the Wolfpack. But
anything. But before we go, the last episode we saw on the wrestling show, there was a little bit of an altercation between Kate and Courtney. What's going to happen going forward with that? Like, because there was a little bit of a thing between you guys and the Outliers. So I'm trying to.
So their technical name, and you'll see this soon because I think they have to legally change it. It's the Outright Liars, not the Outliers. They're bad guys. I'm telling you, fans. Matt and Kate are the bad guys. We're the good guys. And Courtney was just trying to prove a point about how tough of a broad she is. And Courtney is probably one of the toughest girls I've ever met in my entire life. And Kate just couldn't take no for an answer. So she got what was coming to her. There's going to be more coming, I promise you, between the Body Stars and the Outright Liars. Because I just, like we talked about earlier, the Body Stars are a platform for people to shine. And the Outright Liars are like the McMahon family. They just want to drag people down. That's the superstar being real, baby.
Matt would be in a whole lot of trouble if I joined your group.
Hey, and the more the merrier, because I'm just the figurehead. Everybody is there, so there's a spotlight for everybody to shine. But I'm telling you, man, like the best way I can describe this is, you know, Matt has these guys fooled, and only the superstar can pull the curtain down and see the man behind the curtain, and that's coming up soon.
You heard it there, folks. Well, looking forward to seeing episode 5 and the battle royal. Good luck in that, superstar. Hope you actually win it. To be honest with you, I'm going to be biased. I hope you win it.
Thank you. But what'll be awesome is because Courtney's in it also, and so is JB. So if any of the Body Stars win it, it's like the Freebird thing. We all win it. So I thank you, man. And this has been awesome. You guys are quality people. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on the show.
And we'll talk more business outside of it about possibly
rock and roll, man.
Joining your crew. Because I think you guys need the muscle. And
especially if you can be the new big sexy, hell yes, brother.
I can come in there and drop power bombs on people. I don't know how their ring feels, because their ring feels like it really is stiff. When I've seen videos of their ring, it feels really stiff.
So it's because it's a low boy. You can't really see the bounce as much, but it's not anywhere near as stiff as that goddamn boxing ring.
That's great. Okay. I've actually trained in a boxing ring, done boxing, and then I was also done wrestling in a boxing ring. And yeah, your balls go up to your throat when you get slammed.
Yeah, that boxing ring was awful. Like, in fact, there is a match where Josh, as Chaos, is wrestling and he takes a suplex, and I call it the salmon suplex because he hits a part of the ring that doesn't have a mat, and it sounds like you're dropping 30 pounds of salmon like off of a 2-story building. Just like,
Yes.
And yeah, he couldn't move.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we need to get Xavier. We need to get the superstar back on here. Maybe I might get him on some of my old wrestling talks. I might see about getting him on here, and because
I'd love to commentate something with you, man. We have a lot of the same ideas on like wrestling and all that. So
that's the reason why I don't really watch it much now.
Like I stopped watching it several years ago. So I just
But-
don't care about it anymore like I used to.
I know that the Outliers and Nate went to SummerSlam. I'm letting those guys know that SummerSlam will be in Nashville in 2022. So if they want to come to Nashville in 2022 for SummerSlam,
I don't mind go. I would come down for that if I had somebody to, like. If you guys would go, I'd go with you. Just I wouldn't go out of my way to go alone to a show. You know what I mean with WWE.
but I was just letting them know if they want to come, they can extend the olive branch.
Well, nice. Hell
But,
yeah.
you know what, man? Thanks for taking the time out. I know this is probably the longest one I've done because you've also got a lot of knowledge. So obviously,
Extreme knowledge, yes.
so I knew this was going to be a longer interview than the other ones, which is fine because I enjoy picking brains with other people.
When it comes to wrestling, he's all about it. So
Yeah,
he's met his match.
You two are pretty awesome. I really hope you come up to Illinois because I really would like to meet you guys
we're gonna
live
try.
in person.
We're gonna try. We're gonna try.
All about finances.
Yep.
Oh, I hear you.
It's all about that, and a lot of stuff we got going on. We both turn 40 next year, so big 4-0. So that's going to be interesting.
40 is the new 30, man.
Well, for him, 40 is the new 60, but that's beside the
Well, that's because I was that's
That-
from all, that's from old football injuries and shit like
No,
that. So-
not just that. It's just a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
So, but it was nice talking to you.
Yes, thank you guys very, very much.
And by the way, guys, if you didn't get your questions in, send your comments after the video. We'll still look at it. I'll let Xavier know that there were some comments being said, and I know that Matt and Kate didn't show up for it. I mean, I don't know if Matt's ducking you or not. I mean, could be.
Matt doesn't like when there's a prettier guy in the room than him, so that it doesn't surprise me at all that once again he doesn't want to be second fiddle to Superstar.
Well, hey, you know what? Maybe one of those days we'll see Xavier and Kate. I remember you made her tap out to that to your little finisher.
She actually got the upset in that first match. However, I outsmarted all of them, and I bet that's how the $40,000 challenge started. Is I bet $40,000 that I would lose.
That was smart.
So did I throw the match or did she win it?
Question.
We'll never know. That's why it goes into your grave. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for the comments, questions. There's the wrestling show. You can follow them on there. You can follow Xavier. I know you have a Facebook, you have a Twitter, and if you want to promote some of your stuff, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Twitter is Superstar Mykeals. So it's at Superstar Mykeals. I'm on Facebook more often than the Instagram because I don't know about you, but I get these weird fuckers on Instagram that ask me if I am interested in crypto coins and bikini waxes and shit. So I stay away from Instagram, but on Facebook it's just you can search Xavier Mykeals, Mykeals.
You're also got a TikTok because we follow each other, so there's a TikTok you got as well.
See, and I like making fun of those people on TikTok, and I don't think they realize I'm making fun of them. Especially that one where I have the fake boobs.
Yeah, because that's all they kind of do. They go like, oh, "Look, it's me." That's a spam comment there. I don't know what kind of language that is, but anyways, though, we're gonna wrap this up, guys. We're inside the square circle. Xavier Mykeals is still standing. I'm still standing. So obviously there was no blood drawn. There was no blade job or anything like that, or anything like that.
Pretty easy.
It was pretty easy.
Well, hey, sometimes, brother, you meet people you respect, and I totally respect you and Mel. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
We respect you as well, and we'll be more talking business outside of this, so you guys don't get to hear that stuff. So sorry.
Yep, mum's the word.
Mum's the world. So, anyways, thank you for your time. Hope everyone has a great New Year's. Hope you have a great New Year's. man, and
We'll be in touch.
we'll be in touch.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. You too.